My name is James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy, best known for 50 Ironmans, 50 days, 50 states, and you're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go.
I stopped chasing society's dream, and I went after my dreams.
This is what we as human beings can actually do.
Whatever trial you're having, it's hard.
There's a finish line to all of this. You've just got to get through today.
It's awesome.
Fight.
Just where do you go after you set the world record for the most number of half Ironman triathlons in a calendar year, being 22, before you then go on to set the world record for the most number of completed Ironman Distance Triathlons in a calendar year at 50? Well, I'll tell you where you go. You dream up an almost impossible physical challenge by way of completing 50 Ironman Distance Triathlons across 50 days, wait for it, across 50 states of the USA. That's right, the 50-50-50 challenge. And this was the challenge that in June 2015, James Lawrence, aka the Iron Cowboy, took on and completed. I'm Brad Beer, sports physiotherapist by trade and training and founder of Pogo Physio. Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by Physiocram and Pogo Physio. Each week, we'll aim to bring you the latest and greatest information and inspiration designed to help you perform at your physical best. We do this across a range of different episodes, expert editions, featured performers, coaches' corners, and interest editions. And this is the very first featured performer for the 200s. That's right, this is episode 201. And if you missed last week's celebration episode, episode 200, be sure to jump back and enjoy some of the fun reflections, stories, and wisdom shared from our guests over the 200 episodes. There's been some great feedback and support coming through. In particular, many of you commenting on the fun blooper reels from the likes of the great Bernard Lagat. And of course, on last week's episode, episode 200, we announced the Physical Performance Show's very first live event. That's right, in July of 2020, July the 18th, the Physical Performance Show is bringing down under acclaimed sports scientist and to date the most downloaded guest of the Physical Performance Show, Dr. Stephen Seiler, father of polarised training, to the Gold Coast, Australia. In conjunction with the Bond University Institute of Health and Sport, the Physical Performance Show will host Dr. Seiler for an information-packed one-day workshop. The workshop is themed around sustainable training for attainable endurance goals, intensity distribution, interval training, periodization, and monitoring. If you are an endurance athlete, a coach, a student of the sport or exercise sciences, a fitness professional, or of course an athlete of any level, beginner through to elite, then you are not going to want to miss Dr. Stephen Seiler on a rare trip down under come July. There's 100 tickets available, many have already gone, so be sure to jump in quick. Jump over to pogophysio.com.au and hit the services tab, and there you will find the event registration page. Now, by way of bio, today's featured performer, James Lawrence, is a father of 5 amazing children, husband to wife Sunny, hailing from Utah in the USA. After breaking the prior mentioned Guinness World Records for the most number of completed half and full Ironman Distance Triathlons in a calendar year, James wondered if he had found truly his mental and physical limits. And James knew there was more. So the dream was birthed, the 50-50-50 challenge, 50 Ironman triathlons across 50 days across 50 states of the USA. And on today's episode, James shares around the highs, the lows, and the many, many learnings from the journey. We discuss life after the 50-50-50, the psychological tactics that James deployed to get through such a grueling endurance event, including the concept of a power minute. James outlines his top 3 learnings from completing the challenge, shares around why if you are tired of starting over, then stop giving up. We discuss the physiological adaptations that occurred after accruing such fatigue in James's body. And James shares one of the best statements I've heard for a long time, and that is why a high tolerance to monotony is an underrated superpower. Now, if you are yet to see the Iron Cowboy documentary on Netflix, then it is a must. Following this episode, be sure to jump over to Netflix and enjoy the documentary. It will give you a whole nother level of appreciation of the arduous of the 50-50-50. In the meantime, here is my conversation with the Iron Cowboy himself, James Lawrence. Well, this is a thrill. Since I watched the Iron Cowboy Netflix documentary, I thought this is a gentleman that would be fantastic to feature here on the Physica Performance Show. So, James Lawrence, aka the Iron Cowboy, welcome to the show.
What's up, everybody? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. James,
you have been one busy gentleman post the 50-50-50. You're a dad of 5, your wife, Sunny. I believe you've recently been hanging out in Fiji and Patagonia, correct?
Yeah, we just did some crazy racing over in Fiji. It's called the Eco Challenge. It's the world's toughest race is what they call it. And it'll be releasing this summer on Amazon Prime. And it should be 10 episodes of crazy.
And you probably can't say all the ins and outs or share all the ins and outs, I should say, of that one until it airs, correct?
Yeah, we can't say anything yet. But it was an unbelievable experience. The footage they captured was amazing. They had 66 teams from over 30 countries around the world. It's spectacular. It's definitely going to be worth a watch and to tune in and kind of see what it's like to really get back in the Fijian jungle and go through everything that they put us through. It was awesome.
I mean, the obvious question, James, is how does it compare to the 50-50-50?
Yeah, the producers really wanted me to answer that question. It was the number one question. And here's the reality. You take any big physical activity like an Ironman or one day of the Eco Challenge, and if you were to compare 1-to-1, I would honestly say one day of the Ironman is harder when you're just racing it. And then you take any grueling day, any single grueling day, and you multiply it by the race cutoff in Fiji, which was 11 days or 50 days. And so you just can't compare the two because you have to take into account the compounding effect of something on a daily basis. And as you get deeper and deeper into something, you talk about getting 20, 30, 40, 50 days into something, you can't measure that compounding effect. And so, that's an easy one. The 50 was unequivocally harder than anything else that I've ever done because I've never done anything else for 50 consecutive days other than sleep in my bed.
And James, you mentioned that, the compounding effect. We want to dive into the 50-50-50 as, perhaps one of the greatest endurance feats ever, because as you say, the compounding effect is different from 11 to 50 days. And as a student of exercise science and physiotherapy over the years, I was intrigued to see how a physical body could withstand the cumulative effect of that huge exposure of training load. So let's go there in a moment. But I think the thing, James, that not everyone connects the dots on unless they've watched the documentary, which I'd highly recommend, is your background. You didn't grow up running cross country, loving cross country. You grew up playing with your sisters, as your mum says in the documentary, playing with dolls and getting your hair done, riding bikes with your father. And then, through a challenge through Sunny, your wife, you entered your first marathon. So could you join the dots there, James, before we talk 50-50-50 on the fact that, you know, you haven't been a lifelong endurance athlete. You've discovered this and how you've then built to prepare for the 50-50?
I've been coaching for about a decade, and we run an online coaching program, and we've been running some ads recently on social media. And we are giving away just a basic training plan to get people introduced to our philosophies, and then obviously you can upgrade from there into our membership area. But somebody made a comment on there that basically said, "Don't listen to anything this guy says." And I reached out to him behind the scenes and I said, "Hey, did I wrong you in some way? Why don't listen to anything I say?" And he's like, "Because what you accomplished isn't relatable and you're just basically a genetic freak." And I was like, "No, it's the exact opposite of that. I started out just like anybody else, suffering and figuring out how to finish a 4-mile fun run. I mean, my beginning was so simple and so humble. And I literally took a decade to get to that point. I'm just like anybody else out there who is, middle America or whatever they're doing, and in a relationship and has a career and is struggling to find an outlet, or maybe was competitive back in the day. And we all live in our glory days. But I was kind of taken back by that comment, and I think that is the general perception out there, that they see the headline of the 50 and they say, "Oh, that dude's different." And I guess I am different in the fact that I worked at something with an intense focus for a decade, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that to achieve their success. But he has it completely wrong. I started just like anybody else that's listening to this podcast, figuring out how to put one foot in front of the other, learning, dissecting, to the point where we did something so extraordinary that it's now perceived that I'm not normal, but I'm just a normal dude.
So you are relatable, and yes, while the magnitude of your accomplishments are enormous, as you say, it's the same overcoming, it's the same putting one foot in front of the other, and improving, not in 1 year, but over 10 years. I've heard it said success is that laser focus over 10 years, but it can be so hard for 10 years to focus, right?
Well, that's when everybody quits, because they early on there's so much adversity, there's so much hardship, there's so much learning. A lot of people get frustrated. There's not progress. I mean, people email all the time. They're like, "Hey, you've inspired me. I've quit my job and I've started an online business." And I'm like, "No, don't do that." Like, rule number 1 is don't quit your day job. You chase your dreams in early hours of the morning, late hours at night, around you providing income for your family. And it's just the biggest mistake that people make. And I get chasing dreams and I get going out there, but people do not realize how long it takes for an online business to be successful, how long it takes for your body to adapt. The reason we were so successful in this campaign was because of all the small things we did leading up to it. And this came down to durability. It came down to me not getting injured in the moments and being able to just hold on. And there's people that have tried to do the 50 since I did, because we set that benchmark, and they've all failed. And it's because injury creeps up, because they haven't been doing these types of challenges for 10 years. I mean, it is a very serious commitment to get to any level of reasonable heights. It just doesn't happen overnight. And it's great to have big goals, but you have to be patient with those goals, and you have to be, I always say the secret to success is doing a lot of little things consistently over a long period of time.
A lot of little things consistently over a long period of time. That's powerful, James. 2 words jumped out to me in what you just shared: patience and durability. What great words and characteristics they are. I've got to ask, how did that first marathon go that Sonny entered you in all those years ago, that I believe it was the Salt Lake City Marathon? What was your experience like, debut marathoner?
Oh, yeah, dude, it was awful. I hated running. I woke up the next day, my knees were so swollen I couldn't walk. And it was funny because my wife went to church the following day and I didn't go. And they knew that we had done the marathon, and they said, "Hey, how did the marathon go? Where's James?" And my wife said, "Oh, yeah, they said, did you beat James or did he beat you? And she said, well, he beat me, but I can walk today. And so it was a pretty negative experience. I threw up at the finish line. I felt terrible. During training, I developed terrible plantar fasciitis and terrible IT syndrome on my knee. And most people would have those experiences and just quit. But for me, I was like, there's something I'm doing wrong. And I don't want that experience to define my endurance or athletic career. And so that's when I really started to dive in and dissect kind of endurance sports, which led me to sprint triathlons, which put us on the journey that we now know over the past decade.
And that journey, from the sprint triathlon origins takes you through to the Guinness World Records of 30 full Ironmans in 1 year across 11 countries, preceded by 22 half Ironmans in 2011 across 30 weeks. And the thing that staggered me, James, was at the end of those record-setting accomplishments, you still felt like there was something missing, that in your words, you hadn't yet found your physical limit. So can you speak to where that feeling came from? Yeah,
and sitting here today, 5 years post the 50, I still don't think I found my mental and physical limits. And the reality is on any journey that we're on, if we continue to push ourselves physically and mentally, if we continue to try to learn and grow and break things, we ultimately gain experience and knowledge. And from that experience and knowledge, we gain confidence. And when you're in the middle of something, it's always the hardest thing you've ever done or could imagine, because that's the furthest you've progressed on your journey. But then when you finish it, you can look back and go, okay, I learned this, I learned X, I now have this experience. I think I can apply that and do something harder and better than I previously did. And so, and that's why people always say, is it enough? Have you done enough? Is there more? When is that line? And it's interesting. I don't know that there is a line, because each individual, as they progress on their journey, learns and grows. And so my perception of the challenges that we do seem very realistic because of the journey that I've been on and the experiences that I have. Where someone from the outside looking in, it seems totally impossible because they haven't experienced what we've experienced and had that growth and learning and confidence.
So there's more.
That's funny. You picked up on that.
There is more. James Lawrence.
There's always more, brother. There's always more.
James, one of the things Sunny said on reflection of the 50-50-50 that I thought was really powerful was she said, human beings believe that if things are hard, they are wrong. And that as a result, we don't always see the reward of really what, as you just referred to, these challenges is the refining fire. So can you speak just to encourage people that maybe are finding themselves at the moment in the middle, in the hard yards, feeling like there's maybe very little light in the tunnel, whatever the situation, just on this concept that just because it's hard, it doesn't make it wrong?
Yeah, I do a lot of speaking now around the world. I've just been blessed to be able to do that. And one of the quotes that I love is, if you're tired of starting over, stop giving up. And so anybody that's in the middle of it in those hard yards, if you quit right now, you're going to have to start all over with something else, or just be a lazy turd the rest of your life. So literally, if you're tired of starting over, stop giving up and just keep pushing through those difficult moments, because there comes a time on your journey where you do gain that experience and that knowledge, where the mind and the body and the spirit, they all come into unison with each other. And now you really start to click in on all cylinders. And most people never get to that point because they quit, they abandon, they start over, whatever is it that they do. And to me, that's the hardest journeys, because you've got to go through all of those hard learnings every single time, because you're not breaking through. And I believe that we all have to go through life and learn the same lessons. And you're going to keep learning the same lessons until you have those breakthroughs. And so you might as well just push through the hard times right now, have those breakthroughs, learn the lessons, and get on to the fun stuff, man. Because now that I've done, it was interesting because, the Fiji race was dubbed, it's the hardest race on the planet. Dude, I went out there and we had a hell of a good time. We had a blast. We were the fun team because we weren't necessarily struggling to the level the other teams were. It wasn't the hardest thing we've done before, because I brought my teammates from the 50 and a couple other guys that I knew had done some really tough stuff. So, I mean, people listening and whatnot, a huge takeaway is do the hard things so that when other things that other people perceive as hard are easy for you. And you now get to enjoy them instead of suffering through all of these things that shouldn't be that hard. So that's a challenge for people, is do the hardest thing you can think of, gain experience, and do something harder than that, so that when things, you can just get to enjoy other stuff because it's no longer the hardest thing you've done.
Because your perspective has shifted because you've endured, and now your benchmark and suffering so much higher.
Yeah, you're a different person.
I mean, just to recap, you said if you are tired of starting over, stop giving up. And, you mentioned that you've now gone on to fun stuff like speaking, and, we've just been able to line this up after you've come from Google. So James, from one platform to the next, the physical performance show after Google, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
James, the 50-50-50, I think anyone in the endurance world has heard of it. I implore anyone that hasn't yet watched the Netflix documentary to jump in and enjoy. I watched it for the second time last night in preparing for today, but can you just speak briefly to the concept, the origins of the concept, and then I think it would be full of rich learnings to take out some of the key learnings from the experience. So the 50-50-50, let's start with the origins of it. How did that idea get birthed?
Yeah, so we were on this journey of raising money for charity and pushing myself physically, mentally, and doing fun, adventurous stuff with the family. And ultimately, at the end of the 2012 world record, where we did 30 Ironmans, 11 countries, all official events around the world, I kind of, just what we talked about, I looked back on it and went, yeah, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. But now I've got some experience, and I didn't find myself physically and mentally, and what does that look like, and what do I do in that moment? And so the concept was born of, inspired by Dean Karnazes, who did 50 marathons in 50 days. And I was like, man, if that dude did it with a marathon, what could I do, and could I do it with an Ironman? And that was kind of the initial turnings of it. And then I just we got a map, we put it on the wall, we started drawing lines on it and what was possible, and got the kids involved. And then one thing led to another, and we got far enough down the road, and we started to really believe. And then, as history unfolds, June and July 2015, we did 50 Iron distance courses, 50 consecutive days, one in all 50 U.S. states.
And standing on the start line there on the 6th of June 2015 in Hawaii, and logistically, if I'm correct, you had to go from Hawaii to Alaska just with the time zones to then be able to roll out the rest of the states. But standing on the start line, I mean, you've done 30 Ironmans across a year, that's a different kettle of fish, to 50 Ironmans over 50 consecutive days with travel and sleep deprivation along the way. What is going through James Lawrence's head? If you had to break down the percentage of fear versus excitement, what would it be?
Oh, dude, it was 100% excitement. I think at that point in the journey, we had no idea yet how crazy, chaotic, just ridiculous it would end up being. And so we were still so filled with excitement and positivity and energy. I literally remember swimming and cheering underneath the water, just to myself. I was the only one that could probably hear, but I was literally cheering out loud as I was blowing bubbles underneath the water, because I was so excited about what we had done, and so much preparation had gone into that moment. We were absolutely naive to what was coming, and I think that's a blessing. You've heard this before, but I think, if we truly knew what a monumental journey would be or take, we wouldn't embark on such a journey. And so a blessing in disguise.
And I think there's real beauty in that naivety, as you say. But if you knew what your journey would entail across a 50-50-50, would have you still done it? I think I know the answer.
Man, it depends when you ask me that question. Yes, I would still do it again the first time, because I now know the impact that it's having on people around the world. And that you can't put a price tag on. What I went through physically and emotionally, that's just so hard to quantify. But yeah, it's changed my life. We wouldn't be in the position we're in now to have the influence we have and the lifestyle that we have had we not done that and been successful with it. I absolutely don't regret doing it. It changed my life, but it was a journey.
You mentioned impacting others. Are there any practical examples, James? I love the narrative in the documentary where, you know, your mother's inspired to run 5 kilometres for the last, I believe, 5 days of the campaign, when she's, you know, not a runner per se, as is outlined in the film. She's battled with obesity over her life. But, you know, your mother is a practical example. But there must be some pretty interesting and incredible stories that the inspiration people have taken from the 50-50-50 have spawned. So are there any that you can share?
It's been remarkable, and you can name getting out of an abusive relationship to overcoming drug addiction or alcoholism, being inspired to get up off the couch and reclaim a person's life. We have hundreds of emails from individuals who said, "Hey, you don't know me, and I was too ashamed to come up to you when you spoke, but since then, this is what I've done." And it's just so cool to have those messages come in and know that our family's little story is impacting people for change. Because one of the big things that I've realized is adults have stopped dreaming, and really the majority of people are losing the conversation and criticism that we are having with ourselves. And it's winning that conversation in those small moments that is the most important. And it's cool to be giving people hope once again, to be able to go out and dream and to not just settle for mediocrity.
What do you think, James? That's so rich that you're giving, you know, the journey has given people hope, whether that's escaping an abusive relationship or tackling a physical challenge. But, you know, you mentioned there that adults have stopped dreaming. Can you share a little around that? What do you think's driven that? What's that a result of?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's just experiencing failures and really listening to the outside influences and voices and other people's opinion. And I think just that reinforcement of negativity, and I think social media has been really bad for that, listening to that or seeing someone's fake life on Instagram and saying, "Oh, I can't achieve that." And so we're getting it from both sides, both the, "Oh, I can't achieve that," and, "Oh, I'm being criticized and ridiculed for what I'm doing." And then we just get into this spiral, and we quit up and we give up. And it's also stems a lot from fear. Whether it's fear of success, fear of failure, fear of difficult situations, fear of being uncomfortable, all of these things contribute to our ability to just like crawl into a hole and mind our business. And the whole, I mean, everybody is so damn sensitive nowadays. You can't do anything or have a voice. And I think all of those things, I mean, that was a lot of things, but all of those things are contributing to people not wanting to step out or do something. I mean, we were so heavily criticized for what we did, how we did it. And I would way rather have had the experience that I had and be criticized than to never have had that experience.
And that's something that, you know, sitting from the comfort of my lounge chair, James, watching the documentary twice, it really struck home. Gosh, if you're going to do anything of significance, you know, you will pay the price of criticism. And, you know, some of it was quite scathing and, you know, in my opinion, much of it unjustified. I mean, you know, whether it was using a drip because of the severe dehydration and the fact that no one at that point had ever gone beyond consecutive days of Ironman triathlons, or, you know, just logistics of organising things like the charity. Well,
it's ridiculous too, because you look at the finish line of an Ironman and they're lined up to get an IV drip.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I was suspended by the WADA anti-doping, and we fought it, and they ended up changing the rule because we didn't do anything wrong, and they overturned it because it was a safety concern, and it was just the rule was really poorly written, and we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't break any rules. We didn't do any doping. We didn't do any of that. It was just the media trying to derail the success that we were having.
I mean, it looked like at day 30, you know, you mentioned there that people have stopped dreaming, and it's easy for us to feel like we want to crawl into a hole. On day 30, I think it was around then, it looked like you had crawled into that hole. You know, you commented that people weren't donating like, you expected that they would. It was just getting insanely tough physically. You were falling asleep on the bike, in the water. Did the criticisms fuel you? Or at that point, I remember seeing you get that TV interview in Florida, and you couldn't even get the words out. You were just, the media interviewer, she said something like, this is great, you're raising funds for charity. And you could just see it hit the heartstrings. You couldn't even get the words out. You were just completely overcome. Did that criticism fuel you, or at that point had that just really pushed you down into the ground?
Yeah, it's interesting because you can allow criticism to do two things. It can allow you to, or force you to quit, or you can take that and put fuel to your fire. And you don't want to have the attitude of, I'm going to prove you wrong, and that can't be the entire piece of your campaign. But it's definitely fuel to your fire, and it's good to silently go prove those people wrong and allow that to fuel your fire. But I once we really started to focus on things we could control, started focusing on the positive, really blocking out any of those negative things that we couldn't control, that's when the energy really started to shift. And us as a team, we really sat down and said, hey guys, we've been in a fight, and we want to go forward, and ultimately as a team, let's prove ourselves right. Let's go and prove and just showcase what we can do, and let's execute at a high level. Forget about trying to prove everybody wrong. Forget about trying to focus on all the negativity. Let's just join arms, and let's just prove what we're doing. Let's prove us right, knowing that we can do this. And
and that you did, and your crew, your team. I mean, it was quite the convoy of characters. Dave, your coach, and Casey, your wingman. Dallas, your chiropractor. It was an arrangement and assortment of great people.
Yeah, I also say that there's nothing great that's ever accomplished on our own. And I certainly couldn't have done it without Casey and Aaron and Dallas and my coach David, and obviously my wife and my 5 kids and everybody else. I mean, the people really, despite, we've talked about the negativity and whatnot, but thousands of people came out and supported this with positivity and joined us every single day. And it couldn't have done it with all those people and the state ambassadors that volunteered their time and provided us food and love and encouragement and shower and all. I mean, it's just unbelievable the support that we got as we continued to move across the country. It was remarkable.
You're listening to the Iron Cowboy, James Lawrence, ultra-endurance athlete, sharing around the highs, the lows, and the learnings of the 50-50-50 challenge. Support for today's show comes from Physiocrem. Physiocrem is a topical massage cream containing natural plant-based ingredients, ideal for the temporary relief of muscular aches and pains. If you're conscious of what you put on your body, you'll be happy to know that Physiocrem does not contain parabens or hydroxybenzoates, and its non-greasy formula doesn't leave any sticky residue behind. Physiocrem can be found Australia-wide at your local Coles, chemist or health store, as well as via their online shop. They've offered listeners of the show 20% off the entire product range by simply jumping over to physiocrem.com.au, that's physiocrem.com.au, and using the coupon code POGO, P-O-G-O. Hurting Sucks and Physiocrem have got your back. Support for today's show also comes lovingly from Pogo Physio. We exist to simply help you get back to your physical best following injury. Our philosophy is very simple. We do not wish to see you for a session more than what you require to get back to your best and across what we term the physio finish line. To find out more about Pogo Physio's award-winning services, jump over to pogophysio.com.au. There you can schedule your 1-hour initial appointment or even your online telehealth consultation for those who live outside of Queensland or Australia. For now, let's jump back with the Iron Cowboy himself, James Lawrence, on this featured performer episode. James Lawrence, Iron Cowboy, if you had to consolidate your top 3 learnings from the 50-50-50, I've got a bunch of things I want to explore with you, but what would be your top 3 takeaways or learnings if you had to consolidate them?
You'll never be ready. Just show up and start. Time's gonna keep ticking either way, so you might as well keep moving. And if you're tired of starting over, stop giving up.
Yeah, wow. Can we explore those? You will never be ready. Just start. I mean, how do you prepare for 50-50-50? You can't, right? No one's done it. You physically can't put those hours in. There's a cap on your preparation time.
Yeah, you can't. And the best example that I can have is you're never going to be ready to be a parent. And you have a baby, and then you just really start to figure it out. And you can read the books, and you can prepare yourself for whatever. And the same thing with the 50 is we knew we could do as much as we could and get me as strong as possible, but there was no way to prepare for that 50 days. And it's like having a baby or doing the 50. You learn as you go on the journey, and you make mistakes and you fix them and you course correct. I've seen people plan their way to a failure, and you will never have the perfect plan for whatever you're doing because it's impossible. You can't plan for things you don't know that are going to happen on your journey. You can't have conversations with people you haven't met because those doors haven't been opened and those introductions haven't been made. And you don't know what an evolution of your product or brand or service is gonna be because you haven't got to the point. You literally have to start with somewhat of a plan and just attack it and go after it and just keep showing up every single day. And that's how you have success. You have to just eventually say, you know what, I'm going. This is it. I'm going to dive in. We're starting. And then you just got to go.
I love that. You will never be ready. Just start.
Just pick a date, put it on the calendar, and then work towards it.
June 6, 2015. Start of 50-50-50. James, the second one you said is keep moving.
Yeah, time literally doesn't care about any of us, and you know, time is literally going to keep ticking away. And the best example I can have right now would be one of my friends is a little bit older, was changing careers, didn't know what to do, and I said, he's like, should I go back to school or this and that? And we said, yeah, just go back to school and learn and change careers. And he's like, well, I'm a little bit older. And he was over here biking the other day, and we said, hey, and he goes, hey, I'm 2 weeks away from graduating.
Huh.
And he goes, I can't believe how much time, how much we've accomplished. And the 2 years was already over. And he goes, I could still be doing the same thing I was, but I started and I showed up every single day, and here we are, it's already at the end. And he's going to have a new career, and he's going to do it for 30 years. Right. And so that, you know, people just don't understand that time's going to pass either way. And if you keep doing just the smallest of tasks every single day, you're going to chip away at what you're doing. The problem is people, you know, eat an elephant in a day, right? They try to do everything on their to-do list in the one day. And the reality is I think we should celebrate when we knock one thing off our list. Like we could have a bad day and just do one thing on our list. Well, that's great. You did one thing on your list. You got closer to your goal because you did something. And so I think we get so overwhelmed and we that negative self-talk comes in, and we get hard on ourselves because we didn't do the 25 things we wanted to do today, and we did one, and that's a win.
Keep moving. So you'll never be ready. Just start. Keep moving. And then this third takeaway, top learning from the 50-50-50, James, if you are tired of starting over, stop giving up, as you've already elaborated on.
Yeah, we had a unique and good reason to quit every single day, and we could go back to the drawing board and try to figure out those mistakes and then start over. And 5 years later, we would literally be still trying to complete the 50 because of all the things we didn't know and had to learn throughout. And to quit and to go back and to quit and to go back, at some point in time, you just gotta push through and adjust and make those and course correct and learn.
I don't know if you can separate the two, but I like to ask guests the darkest day and the highlight of their journeys with regards to the 50-50-50. Was there any distinction between the physically hardest day and the emotionally hardest day?
I think they go hand in hand, because when you're broken emotionally, it has a huge toll on you physically, and when you're broken physically, it has a huge toll on you emotionally. For us, obviously, some of the toughest moments was probably 16, 17, 18, 19. I mean, we were chasing a hurricane. We were indoors. I had crashed on my bike and fallen asleep. There was just so much controversy during those times, and you're approaching 20, which isn't even halfway, And then you really start to have those conversations with yourself. So I mean, it got really dark, 15 through 20. And that's when everybody quits. That's when the last 5% quit, because everybody quit on the first 5 days. But the last 4% quit on those days, and then less than 1% push through that and push on to something great.
Yeah, that messy middle. I've heard it said, don't quit before the inflection point.
Yeah. Yep.
Just don't quit, as you say. Keep moving. James, one of the things I've picked up through some of your other sharings with interviews is the concept of your psychology and some of the mind tricks that you deployed. In particular, I really loved, I was out doing my long run, actually, when I heard you share this. You spoke about the power minute. And I thought, right, I'm hurting here. I'm going to adopt James Lawrence's power minute. So can you share a little bit about this power minute?
Yeah, we just get so focused and overwhelmed by, again, whatever it is that we're doing. And I just did a really, really tough race in Patagonia, and the race at the end of the world. And it was a grueling full distance triathlon with a ton of climbing, trail run, freezing cold swim. And I got to the run part of it, and lack of preparation, totally my fault. I wasn't ready to race that run. And it was physically challenging to do a run, and I implemented exactly this. I had to narrow. I couldn't look at it as 26 miles or 44K. I had to break it down into 1 minute sections. And I always say that I can be perfect for 1 minute. And I literally ran 1 minute, walked 1 minute, ran 1 minute, walked 1 minute for 3 hours. And I lived in a 1 minute space because I couldn't conceptualize 26 miles, but I could, hey, I'm going to run for a minute, which means I ultimately ended up running an hour and a half of those last 3 hours. No way would have I been able to run an hour and a half straight, just because of how I was feeling and the overwhelming nature of what we were doing. And so same thing on the 50. And this goes, even big moments in the eco challenge in Fiji. We'd be 6 days into it and come up onto a 50-mile jungle trek. And exhausted and broken, you think there's no way, even fresh, I could go do a 50-mile jungle trek. But with the realization that, okay, I can't, literally by putting one foot in front of the other, I'm not going to die. And so I'm going to keep doing that and live in a small, very minute moment in time, and then just keep repeating that. And by doing that, again, it goes back to time management. Time's going to keep moving. So if I keep moving, eventually I'm going to get to my mark. It may take me longer than I want to, but eventually I'm going to get to my mark, whether it's business or physical activity. If my goal to be whatever profitable in 2 years, well, I'm not hitting that mark, but if I kept moving, I get there in 4. Well, that's still a huge win. I still got there. Yeah. Right? I still made it to that moment that I was shooting for. It just took me a little bit longer.
Yeah, powerful. One of the other mind tricks, if you like, or psychological tactics was you had, banned, so to speak, your crew from talking about double digits, I believe, going into the later stages of the 50-50-50, where it wasn't 18 days to go, it was 10 plus 8. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just, again, people look at the project or task in its entirety instead of breaking it down into manageable pieces. And for me, we were 32 into it, and somebody says, "Hey, you've only got 18 more Ironman to go," and I'd be like, "Are you effing kidding me? 18 more Ironmans? That is so many." But if somebody said, "Hey, you've got 10 to go to 9 to go, or 10 to go to 8 to go, or 9 to go to 9 to go," I was like, "Oh yeah, I can do 9 more, and then I only have to do 9 more." Right? I could start to break those numbers down in my mind. But if somebody said, "Hey, you've got 18 to go," I'd be like, "Ugh, I am out. There's no way."
So it's that theme, isn't it, of taking the complex and just starting and keeping moving and using whatever strategies you need to not give up.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, and for some reason, again, it goes back to not dreaming. For some reason, we've forgotten how simple things can be, and we've reached a day and age of instant gratification and secret pills and magic potions and all this other bullshit. And it's crazy because it's literally not rocket science, and we have forgotten the basics. I also say another quote that says, "A high tolerance for monotony is an underrated superpower." Right? But people forget that to become a master at something, it takes repetition and repetition. I heard someone say, I think it was one of the wingman Rivers. He said, "Look, dude, if you can't stand boredom and repetition, endurance sports isn't your jam. Go do CrossFit." And I mean, he's so right. I mean, I can't tell you how many times over the past decade I've repeated the exact same workout, just at a different level or intensity. But it's just how science works. It's how you evolve the body and put it under stress and recover, right? But if you can't master monotony and become okay with your thoughts and all, I mean, forget it. Don't do endurance sports. Don't plan on being excellent at anything, because to become excellent at anything, it takes massive repetition, insane boredom, and just rep after rep after rep, and showing up and doing the exact same thing over and over and over and over until an Ironman a day becomes routine.
A high tolerance to monotony is a superpower. I absolutely love that. James, a listener question from Kate Gallash, who's a dietitian herself, is that she's was and has been intrigued about the fueling strategy for the 50-50-50, and what component of your intake was whole foods. I have heard you talk about the Jesus fuels concept versus, gels, and just getting whatever you could to make up, I believe it was something like 10 to 12,000 calories a day you needed.
Yeah, 10 to 12 is what we ended up deciding that we needed in order for me to maintain the calorie deficit and keep me going. I didn't take a single gel or goo on the entire journey. It was all done with real food.
Wow.
Obviously, there was definitely some donuts and rock stars mixed in between there. There was moments where we just didn't have anything on hand, and anything we could get our hands on, we turned it into fuel. But we tried to consume as much nutrient dense, high fat, high calorie type foods we could get our hands on to fuel us and to get that. I mean, it's just, it's so hard to, again, imagine how much food that actually is. And when it had to be consumed while moving, that added another element of difficulty to it. I mean, just the GI distress of 10 to 12,000 calories a day, and then put on top of it that it had to be consumed while moving. I mean, that just takes it to a whole other level.
What was the funniest thing you ingested on the journey?
I remember I was in South Carolina, and we had a great host, and he was like, "Hey, any restaurant you want, anything you want from it, just tell us what you're craving, and we'll go get it." And I said, "You know what? I want a porterhouse steak, mashed potatoes, and sautéed vegetables." And I took off for the last part of the bike ride. I came back in, and I got there, and there was a porterhouse steak, mashed potatoes, and some sautéed vegetables. And so I crushed it and took off running and did the marathon.
You're listening to the Iron Cowboy, aka James Lawrence, on this a featured performer episode, sharing around the highs, the lows, and the journey of the 50-50-50 and beyond. If you missed last week's episode, it was the 200th celebration episode of the show. It was a whole lot of fun, where we heard from you, some of the faithful supporters of the show, and what it is that you've enjoyed across the years. And we also recapped on some of the more memorable, fun, and challenging stories that our guests have so generously shared. Be sure to jump back and enjoy the 200th episode. And thank you for your earbuds to date. Your support really does mean an incredible amount. For now, let's jump back with James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy, on this a featured performer episode, exploring all things mental and physical limits of the human body. James, let's jump into the performance round, a rapid-fire series of questions. You've survived the 50-50-50. Let's see if you can survive the performance round. Are you ready?
Let's go.
James Lawrence, the training session you most dislike?
Oh, long runs. I hate long runs.
How long are we talking?
2+ hours.
Yeah. Training session you most love?
Short power intervals on my bike.
Favorite pre-event meal?
Sushi.
Bedtime and morning time, what are they?
8:30 and 7 a.m.
Who's the athlete the Iron Cowboy most admires and why?
George St. Pierre from Canada, mixed martial arts fighter, extreme discipline, master execution.
Toughest competitor you've ever lined up against, and why?
Man, it's my coach, David Warden. We battled for years and years and years, and it was just so much fun. And I think it was most frustrating because I couldn't figure out how he was doing it. And then finally I hired him to be my coach, and now I kick his ass.
The mantra, what is the key mantra that you use when you're out there pushing through the hard times?
Man, I don't have one. I just think of my kids.
Yeah, beautiful.
I envision the good times with my kids and try to shift that energy.
Best recovery tip?
Sleep and eat.
One word to describe your competition style or your racing style?
I'm sneaky.
You've got to elaborate on that, James.
You'll beat me every day in a training session, but a different guy shows up on race day. I will give you a false sense of confidence.
Brilliant. How would James Lawrence describe being in the zone?
Man, when I put on my yellow sunglasses, I turn into the Iron Cowboy, and I'm unfazed and I'm ruthless.
When was the last time you were in that zone?
2015, but it's going to show up a lot in 2020.
Watch this space, right? What's the hardest session, finally, James, you've ever done?
One of the hardest sessions that I always do is on my bike. It's a 3-hour ride, and there's 3 by 20 minutes in zone 3, and then it finishes with 10 by 1 minutes in a zone 4 or 5.
James, you are out of the performance round. Well done. You can chalk that up as a session for today.
All right.
Yeah, James, every guest of the show issues listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So what is the Iron Cowboys physical challenge to listeners going to be for the week?
Well, I'll give you a fake one, and then I'll give you a real one. I think everyone's physical challenge for 2020 should be to sign up for a really tough race that we put on here in Utah called the Guardsman. There's an Olympic, a half, and a full. And the reason we put this race together was to give back to people the experiences that I've had and felt, to where physically and mentally you think you're broken and you have to choose whether or not you're going to take the next step. And so we put together an unbelievable race here in Utah that I would challenge everybody to come out and do. It's called the Guardsman. And you can access that through our website, ironcowboy.com. Physical challenge. This is a tough one, but one that I think hopefully you'll understand. Everybody's heart is different, and so I always want people to have a gut check. And so my challenge would be to go do a mile as fast as you can, and whether that's get up off the couch and walk a mile, or if you're at the top of your game, try to go break 5 minutes. So I would say my physical challenge right now would be to go crush 1 mile.
And if you take this challenge on, let's post that up and share the results irrespective of times, and we'll tag in the Iron Cowboy, right?
There you go.
James, talking about hearts, I am intrigued about physiological adaptations post the 50-50-50. I mean, what did you notice? Were there any interesting findings from your heart rate post the challenge? What did you see?
Yeah, everything got really bad really quick. Only because I was forced into retirement, for lack of a better word, only because I was mentally, physically fried. I had to shift my focus and attention to speaking and coaching and getting my finances back on track. We'd sacrificed a ton to be able to go out and do that. I put on 30 pounds and just ultimately got pretty out of shape. And it's taken me a couple of years to get back to where this year's going to be a fun year of racing, and then we've got a fun challenge for 2020 that I'm not going to talk about.
That you are tight-lipped on, James. Yeah. This is a difficult question, but hey, you don't shy from difficult things. You've already shared so brilliantly some of your top learnings that you've distilled. But if you had to take everything you've learnt across your athletic life journey to date and boil it down to just one piece of advice to help listeners of this show pursue their own physical best, what would it be? What would the Iron Cowboys' one piece of advice be?
Show up every day.
James Lawrence, thank you for showing up today.
Yeah, you're well. Thanks for having me.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show. And I trust and I know that you, like I, enjoyed James Lawrence's sharings. If you did, then jump over and follow James. He is easily found at Iron Cowboy James over on Instagram. James is a great inspirational and motivational follow, that's for sure. Now, if you take on James's physical challenge for the week, be sure to reach out and let James know how you've gone with your 1 mile best effort. You can tag James in at Iron Cowboy James, and you can also tag in the show at Physical Performance Show, myself at Brad_Beer for any feedback you may wish to forward me. Talking about tagging people in, if you are taking a podsy, then that is always so much fun. Thank you for tagging the show in at Physical Performance Show. Of course, you'll find the full show notes over on pogophysio.com.au and also the Facebook page where you can leave a question for the guests after the episodes have gone live. From there, we endeavour to ask the guests your questions following the episodes. Now, my top 3 learnings from James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy, were: number 1, just don't quit. Even when the chips are down, just like for James, he was falling asleep on the bike and in the water. Just know that it will pass. There's always more. There's more in you. And be mindful that quitting anything can occur before that inflection point that I mentioned, the point where things may be set to go to new levels. So do not quit. Learning number 2. A high tolerance to monotony is an underrated superpower. I absolutely love that statement from James. It is so true across any area of our lives. Fitness, professional, relational, whatever it may be. Keep showing up and doing the reps. And learning number 3, the great psychological tactic, the concept of the power minute from James. How fantastic. I've already deployed it at times in training, like I mentioned, when I've been struggling. You can do it. You can hold on for just 1 minute longer. So give the power minute a go. A massive thanks to the great folk who make the Physical Performance Show possible each and every week. Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, Susan Wilkin on all things show administration, and Matthew Walding on all things show graphic design. Another huge thank you to faithful show supporter and sponsor, PhysioCreme. PhysioCreme is the cream of choice at Pogo Physio, and you will love it too. So jump over to physiocreme.com.au and redeem your 20% off offer. Now, talking about special offers, don't forget the Stephen Seiler, father of polarized training, 1-day workshop where tickets are now available. Jump over to pogophysio.com.au and there you'll find the event registration page. If you're looking to attend the Dr. Stephen Seiler workshop, Sustainable Training for Attainable Endurance Goals, where you'll learn from one of the world's preeminent thinkers in the world of endurance sports, then the good news is there is a 10% off promo code for show listeners using the coupon code TPPS. It's valid until the end of February 2020, so get in quick. There's only 100 spots available.
Hi, it's Dr. Stephen Seiler from episode 172 of Expert Edition. I'll see you down under in July.
Now, if you know someone in your world who would enjoy the sharings of James, be sure to tag them in, share the episode with them. And of course, if you are enjoying the show, please hit subscribe. That'll keep the show into your earbuds each and every week as it goes live on a Thursday evening. If you've been enjoying more than 4 episodes of the show, then I have a request. Can you please consider leaving a review over on iTunes? It's simple from your desktop or your mobile phone now. Jump over, click the show, and ratings and reviews. A massive thanks to those who have been leaving them. It really is rocket fuel and motivation in continuing to bring you the episodes week after week. So a huge thank you. Now, coming up on episode 202, I like the sound of that one. We're jumping over to an expert edition with Dr. Neil Cochrane, trained neurosurgeon and spinal surgeon. And it's a much needed expert edition where we discuss the surgical and conservative management of back pain, neck pain, and sciatica. Here's a little snippet of my conversation with Dr. Neil Cochrane.
So the chronicity of pain, the length of time in and of itself doesn't worry me unless we're talking, say, 6 months or more. That's certainly a worry. If you've had any pain for 6 months, it's not getting better, or at least there's not complete resolution of the cause, and 2, by definition, you must be developing more significant central nervous system reactions to that pain.
So given the incredibly high incidence and prevalence of back pain and sciatica and neck pain, it's something that impacts on everyone looking to perform at their physical best. Be sure to be tuning in next week to the Physical Performance Show. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.